She joked, "I'm just a placeholder at dinner, my revenge plan." Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I was pouring the wine when I heard the woman I loved call me a temporary joke. It was a Saturday night in late October. Chloe and I were hosting 3 of her closest girlfriends at our upscale downtown apartment. I thought we were celebrating our 2-year anniversary weekend. I had just stepped into the kitchen to grab the reserve Pinot Noir we'd been saving. The kitchen door was cracked just enough for voices to drift through from the dining room. "But what about David?" one of her friends, Jess, asked, her voice hushed. "He seems so incredibly devoted to you, Chloe. You guys are talking about rings." I paused, the corkscrew half turned in the bottle. I smiled, expecting to hear my girlfriend gush about our future. Instead, I heard a light, dismissive laugh. A laugh that froze the blood in my veins. "David? Come on, Jess," Chloe said, her tone dripping with casual cruelty. "He's sweet, sure. He pays the rent on time, and my dad absolutely adores his boring little data analytics job. But let's be real here. He's just a placeholder. A safe bet until Tristan finally gets his startup funded and gets his life together." "Wait, you're still talking to Tristan?" another friend gasped. "Obviously," Chloe scoffed. "Tristan is my soulmate. David is just stability. He's the guy you date, so your family doesn't cut you off while you wait for the real thing." My hands started shaking so violently that the wine bottle rattled against the granite countertop. 2 years. 2 years of my life, my love, my financial support, reduced to a waiting room for her deadbeat ex-boyfriend. The air felt thin. I wanted to storm out there, smash the bottle on the table, and scream. I wanted to throw her out into the street. But my analytical brain kicked in. If I blew up now, she would spin it. She would gaslight me, call me crazy, and run back to him with half my savings. No, she didn't get to win like that. I took a deep breath, forced my heart rate down, and finished opening the wine. I plastered on a warm, oblivious smile and pushed through the swinging door. "Here we go, ladies," I announced cheerfully, pouring the dark red liquid into her glass. Chloe looked up at me, her eyes sparkling, and gently stroked my arm. "Thank you, baby," she purred, pressing a soft kiss to my hand. I smiled back, realizing I would need to systematically destroy her entire life. To understand the depth of this betrayal, you have to understand how perfectly she played the part. When I met Chloe 2 years ago, I thought I had struck gold. I was a practical, numbers-driven guy working 60-hour weeks in data analytics. She was vibrant, charismatic, and brought color into my rigidly structured life. She made me feel like I was the only man in the world. Early on, she told me her ex-boyfriend, Tristan, had been a toxic nightmare who drained her emotionally and financially. She claimed she just wanted a good, honest man. And I played the hero perfectly. When her boutique PR agency struggled, I took over the lease on our luxury apartment so she wouldn't stress. I paid for our vacations. I covered the utilities, the groceries, the expensive dinners. I didn't mind. I loved her, and I believed we were building a foundation for a long, happy marriage. Her father, Arthur, a formidable and wealthy man, even shook my hand at Thanksgiving and told me he was proud she finally picked a solid winner. But that night, after the dinner party ended and her friends finally went home, the illusion shattered into jagged little pieces. We cleaned up the kitchen together, operating like a well-oiled machine. She laughed at my jokes, playfully bumped her hip against mine, and wrapped her arms around my waist. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, David," she whispered, resting her head on my chest. "How does a person do that? How do you look someone in the eyes, feel their heartbeat against yours, and lie with such terrifying ease?" The cognitive dissonance was deafening. I held her, stroking her hair, feeling completely hollow inside. Later that night, I lay awake in our king-sized bed, staring at the dark ceiling. Chloe was fast asleep beside me, her breathing steady and peaceful. The woman I had planned to marry was a phantom. She was a master manipulator using my life as a stepping stone. I felt a cold, calculating anger replacing my grief. I watched her sleep and decided to uncover every single one of her dirty secrets. The next morning, the hardest acting job of my life began. I woke up, made her favorite vanilla latte, and kissed her forehead before leaving for the office. "Have a great day at work, baby," she called out, blowing me a kiss from the sheets. My stomach violently churned. It would have been so easy to confront her right then, to scream, demand answers, and kick her out. But what would that achieve? She would cry, manipulate the narrative, and retreat to Tristan with zero consequences. I needed to know exactly why I was the placeholder. What was the endgame? Tristan was broke. I knew that much from her previous complaints about his failed business ventures. So why was she staying with me while waiting for him? Sitting at my desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and data models, I realized I had to treat my relationship like a forensic audit. If you want to catch a fraudster, you don't warn them you're onto them. You let them keep making mistakes until the trap snaps shut. But the psychological toll was immediate and crushing. Over the next 2 weeks, I had to suppress every instinct I had. When she talked about our future kids, I nodded and smiled. When she held my hand in public, I squeezed back. Every "I love you" felt like swallowing broken glass. I was constantly analyzing her micro-expressions, looking for the cracks in her mask. How long can you smile at someone who is actively stealing your future? The answer is, as long as it takes to ensure they never do it to anyone else again. I started noting her schedule, her habits, and the times she was most guarded with her devices. She always kept her phone face down. She took it into the bathroom. Standard cheater behavior. But I knew the phone would be heavily locked down. I needed a vulnerability in her network. I realized her older iPad was still logged into our shared home Wi-Fi network. That Friday night, Chloe went out for drinks with the girls, leaving her iPad charging on her nightstand. She rarely used it anymore, preferring her new phone. But as a data guy, I knew that people often forget to sync their security protocols across older devices. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slid the tablet off the charger. Her passcode was predictably weak, the date of our anniversary. The irony almost made me laugh. The home screen looked completely normal at first glance. Standard apps, email, a few games. But when I swiped to the last page and opened a folder innocuously labeled Utilities, I found it. A secure messaging app one recognized immediately from a cybersecurity seminar I'd taken last year. I opened it. No secondary password was required on this old device. The screen flooded with message threads, but one was pinned right at the very top. The contact name was simply T. I tapped on it, and 2 years of my life went up in flames. October 12th. Just got him to pay the rent for the next 6 months up front. You should be set for the new apartment deposit. October 15th. I miss you so much it hurts. Playing house with David is exhausting, but we need his salary a little longer. October 28th. He suspects nothing. The girls almost blew it, but he's too clueless to notice. Soon, baby. Soon. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling physically sick. It wasn't just an emotional affair. It wasn't just physical cheating. It was an active, coordinated financial extraction. Tristan wasn't just lingering in the background. He was actively coaching her on how to milk me dry. I took out my phone and meticulously photographed every single screen, making sure the dates and timestamps were crystal clear. I scrolled back for months, capturing hundreds of messages. They were laughing at me, calling me their blind sponsor. I needed to see exactly how much of my money had been secretly funneled away. The next morning, while Chloe was at the gym, I booted up my work laptop. It was time to put my data analytics degree to real use. When we moved in together, we had opened a joint checking account for household expenses. I deposited 70% of my paycheck into it. Chloe was supposed to contribute 30%, but she constantly claimed her PR business was having cash flow issues. I had never scrutinized the ledger. Until today, I downloaded the last 24 months of bank statements and exported them into a master spreadsheet. Within 30 minutes of running basic pivot tables, the anomalies lit up like neon signs. It started small. $200 here, $300 there. Chloe was going to a high-end organic grocery store 3 times a week. The totals were always bizarrely high for the amount of food she brought home. August 4th, $340. 50. August 8th, $295. 00. I cross-referenced these charges with the digital receipts in her email inbox, which I had also managed to access. The grocery bills were only $50 or $60. The rest? Cash back. She was manually withdrawing hundreds of dollars in untraceable cash at the register every single week. Then came the Venmo transactions. She was sending regular payments of $500 to a user named Creative Consulting LLC under the guise of marketing services for the PR firm. A quick search on the state's business registry confirmed my darkest suspicion. Creative Consulting LLC was registered to Tristan Vance. I sat back in my desk chair, the glowing monitor illuminating the sheer scale of the theft. She had siphoned over $34,000 of my hard-earned income to fund her deadbeat ex-boyfriend's life. I was literally paying his rent. The rage I felt was no longer hot and explosive. It was freezing cold. It was terrifyingly calm. I didn't just want to break up with her anymore. I wanted to burn her entire carefully constructed world down to the fucking ground. But one question still gnawed at the back of my mind. Why not just leave me? If she had siphoned enough cash, why stick around and pretend to want marriage? The answer was buried deep in her archived emails. I searched for keywords: Tristan, money, future. Nothing new. Then I searched for her father's name, Arthur. Her dad was a self-made real estate mogul who ruled his family with an iron fist. He despised weakness and valued traditional stability above all else. I found a chain of emails from 6 months ago, exchanged between Chloe and her father's estate attorney, Richard Sterling. The subject line read, "Clarification on 30th birthday trust disbursement." I opened the thread, and the ultimate puzzle piece finally clicked into place. The email explicitly detailed the conditions of her late grandmother's trust fund, which was worth roughly $2 million. Chloe was set to inherit the money on her 30th birthday, which was exactly 8 months away. But there was a massive catch. The trust had a strict stability clause heavily enforced by Arthur, who was the primary executor. To receive the lump sum without Arthur's restrictive oversight, Chloe had to demonstrate personal stability. The lawyer's email clearly stated, "Your father has emphasized that the funds will only be released unrestricted if you are married, engaged, or in a legally documented, stable domestic partnership of at least 2 years. Given your past volatility with Mr. Vance, your current relationship with David is critical to satisfying your father's requirements." I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. I wasn't just an ATM to her. I was her literal golden ticket. She needed my clean record, my steady job, and my oblivious devotion to prove to her strict father that she was a reformed, responsible adult. The second that $2 million cleared her bank account, I would be discarded, and Tristan would immediately move in. I realized I held the power to cost her $2 million in an instant. Armed with the trust fund revelation, the sheer audacity of her double life became staggeringly clear. Chloe wasn't just cheating. She was executing a multi-year corporate merger, and I was the hostile takeover target. I spent the rest of the weekend meticulously tracking the flow of my money to Tristan's life. Through the iPad messages and the bank data, I painted a pathetic picture of their dynamic. Tristan wasn't a misunderstood genius waiting for a break. He was a lazy parasite who spent his days gaming and networking at expensive downtown bars, all funded by my data analytics salary. I found a message from Tristan complaining about his car breaking down. Chloe's response: "Don't worry, babe. David just got his quarterly bonus. I'll tell him I need new equipment for the agency and wire you the cash on Tuesday." Sure enough, that exact Tuesday, $3,000 left our joint account. I remembered that day vividly. I had come home with flowers to celebrate my bonus, and she had cried, telling me her business was failing and she was so stressed. I had comforted her, wiped her fake tears, and transferred the money without a second thought. I felt physically ill remembering my own foolishness. She was orchestrating two completely separate realities. In one, she was my loving, supportive future wife, attending Sunday dinners with her father and praising my work ethic. In the other, she was Tristan's sugar mama, laughing at my boring suits and counting down the days until her 30th birthday, when the trust would trigger. I needed to protect my remaining assets immediately. But if I suddenly cut off the cash flow, she would know I was onto her. I had to be smart. I couldn't do this alone without losing my mind. I needed an airtight strategy. I needed someone objective who understood data, finances, and legal boundaries just as well as I did. I decided it was time to bring my sharpest coworker into this nightmare. On Monday morning, I walked into the office looking like I had survived a car crash. I bypassed the coffee machine and walked straight to the desk of Sarah, our senior financial analyst. Sarah was ruthlessly smart, intensely loyal, and had zero tolerance for nonsense. We had been work best friends for 4 years. "Book a conference room. Now, I need your help," I muttered. Once the door was locked, I broke down. I laid out the spreadsheets, the screenshots, the trust fund emails, and the Venmo receipts. Sarah sat in stunned silence for a full 10 minutes, scrolling through the evidence of Chloe's massive betrayal. David, Sarah finally said, her voice deadly serious. This isn't just cheating. This is systematic financial abuse. We are going to bury this woman. For the next 3 weeks, Sarah became my war general. Under her guidance, I slowly and legally started siphoning my own money back out of the joint account. We used the excuse that I was making aggressive investments in a high-yield locked portfolio for our future. Chloe, playing the part of the supportive partner, couldn't protest without looking suspicious. Meanwhile, Sarah helped me build a fortified, encrypted digital dossier. We cross-referenced every stolen dollar with a corresponding text message between Chloe and Tristan. We created a timeline that proved beyond any reasonable doubt that her entire relationship with me was a fraudulent scheme designed solely to defraud her father's trust conditions. You have to understand, Sarah warned me one evening as we compiled the final PDF. When you expose this, Arthur is going to completely disown her. You are going to ruin her life. I looked at the spreadsheet showing the thousands of dollars I had unknowingly paid to the man sleeping with my girlfriend. My chest felt hollow, devoid of any pity. I looked Sarah dead in the eye and told her that was exactly the point. With my finances secured and the evidence locked away in a cloud vault, I needed a stage for the execution. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. We were having dinner at her father's palatial estate. Arthur, pouring a very expensive scotch, looked across the table at me. So, David, he boomed. Chloe is turning 30 in 8 months. You two have been playing house long enough. When are you going to make an honest woman out of my daughter? I saw Chloe stiffen. This was the pressure point. The trust fund requirement. She looked at me with wide, manufactured desperation, silently begging me to say the right thing to keep her golden ticket intact. I smiled warmly, swirling my scotch. Actually, Arthur, I've been thinking a lot about our future lately. I think it's time we celebrate our commitment properly. I want to host a massive anniversary and commitment celebration next month. All our friends, the family. Something truly special. Chloe's face lit up with absolute triumph. In her mind, she had won. The idiot placeholder was locking himself in, securing the trust fund approval from her father. Arthur grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. Excellent. It's about time, son. On the ride home, Chloe couldn't stop kissing my cheek. You're so amazing, baby. A huge party? We should rent out the solstice room downtown. It's expensive, but we deserve it. Whatever you want, sweetheart, I replied, keeping my eyes on the road. I want all the important people in your life to be there. I want everyone to see exactly who you are to me. Over the next month, I let her plan the lavish event. I paid the exorbitant deposits without a single complaint, knowing this was simply the cost of my final, devastating admission ticket. I even let her invite the 3 friends who had laughed at me in the kitchen. I was building her perfect pedestal so the fall would violently shatter her to pieces. A week before the party, the entire plan nearly imploded. I was working in my home office, double-checking the final PowerPoint presentation of the evidence. I was deeply focused, adjusting the contrast on a screenshot of Tristan bragging about my money. I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't hear Chloe take off her heels. Hey, babe, what are you working on so intensely? She asked, walking straight into the office. My blood turned to ice. She was less than 5 feet away, walking up behind my chair. The screen was glaringly bright, displaying her ultimate betrayal. In a split second of pure adrenaline, I hit a customized macro key I had programmed precisely for an emergency like this. The screen instantly swapped to a complex, incredibly boring Excel sheet filled with anonymized demographic data for my actual job. Just some predictive modeling for the Q3 client report, I said, spinning my chair around smoothly. My heart was beating so fast I thought I might pass out. She leaned over my shoulder, squinting at the spreadsheet. Ugh, numbers. You're such a nerd, David. She laughed, kissing the top of my head. Are you almost done? I want to show you the floral arrangements for the party. Just wrapping up? I smiled, forcing my voice to stay perfectly level. Can't wait to see them. She walked out of the room, completely oblivious. As soon as the door clicked shut, I dropped my head into my hands, gasping for air. The psychological warfare was exhausting. Living with a pathological liar requires you to become an even better liar just to survive. I hated who I was becoming in this apartment. I hated the constant vigilance, the fake smiles, the forced intimacy. The mental toll was getting dangerously heavy, and I knew I couldn't keep this facade up for much longer without entirely losing my own sanity. There were only 7 days left until I could finally pull the pin on the grenade. The night of the commitment celebration finally arrived. The solstice room looked incredible, bathed in warm amber lighting, filled with 80 of our closest friends and family. Waiters circulated with expensive champagne. Chloe looked stunning in a white silk dress, playing the role of the glowing, deeply in-love partner to absolute perfection. Arthur was holding court near the bar, looking immensely proud. My coworker Sarah stood near the back, nursing a gin and tonic, giving me a subtle, knowing nod. Everything was perfectly in place, but I had arranged one final, chaotic variable. 3 days prior, using a burner phone, I had sent a text message to Tristan. I posed as one of Chloe's superficial friends. "Hey Tristan, Chloe wanted me to secretly invite you tonight. She's throwing a party on David's dime, but she said she needs to see her real soulmate tonight. Solstice room, 9 p.m. Don't tell her I told you." It was a massive gamble, but I knew Tristan's ego. I knew he couldn't resist drinking free top-shelf liquor paid for by the placeholder while silently laughing at me from the corner. At 8:45 p.m., I slipped into the AV booth at the back of the venue. I handed the technician a crisp $100 bill and plugged my laptop directly into the main projector system. "When I give you the signal, cut the background music and kill the main house lights," I instructed him. "And whatever happens up there, do not cut the projector feed until I say so." The tech nodded, pocketing the money. I walked back out into the crowd, my pulse thrumming in my ears. I found Chloe chatting excitedly with her father. I slipped my arm around her waist, pulling her close. The trap was fully armed, the exits were conceptually sealed, and the audience was completely oblivious to the impending slaughter. I tapped my spoon against a champagne glass and asked for the room's attention. The gentle clinking of my spoon silenced the room. 80 faces turned toward the center of the floor where Chloe and I stood. Arthur beamed from the front row. Chloe looked up at me with wide, expectant eyes, ready for the lavish public declaration of my undying love. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I started, my voice echoing clearly through the microphone. "Tonight is about honesty. It's about looking at the person standing next to you and acknowledging exactly who they are and exactly what they have built." The crowd offered a collective, warm awe. Chloe squeezed my hand tightly. "Chloe and I have been together for 2 years. 2 years of building a foundation. And as many of you know, Chloe's father, Arthur, values stability and transparency above all else." I looked directly at Arthur, who nodded firmly in agreement. "So, to honor that transparency, I've prepared a short presentation to highlight the incredible reality of our relationship." I gave the subtle hand signal to the AV tech in the back. The ambient background music abruptly cut out. The main chandelier lights dimmed to black. Behind us, a massive 10 by 20-foot projector screen hummed to life, illuminating the dark room with a stark, blinding white light. The first slide appeared. It wasn't a romantic photo from our vacation. It was a massive, high-definition screenshot of a bank statement. The specific line highlighted in bright yellow showed a $3,000 transfer from our joint account to Creative Consulting LLC. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Chloe let go of my hand, her brow furrowing in confusion. "David, what is this?" she whispered, her voice laced with sudden panic. "This, my love," I said into the microphone, my voice devoid of any emotion, "is the cost of being your placeholder." I took a deliberate step away from her, breaking our physical connection, and firmly pressed the remote clicker in my right hand to advance the slides. The next slide displayed the brutal text messages calling me a temporary, pathetic joke. The screen shifted to the text thread between Chloe and T. The timestamp was massive. The words were undeniable. "He's just a placeholder. A safe bet until Tristan gets his startup funded." The entire room gasped in unison. The silence that followed was so profound you could hear ice melting in the glasses. I clicked the remote again. Another text message: "Playing house with David is exhausting, but we need his salary a little longer." Then, I clicked to a split screen. On the left, Chloe's email to her father's lawyer confirming that she needed to fake a stable relationship to inherit the $2 million trust fund. On the right, a spreadsheet compiled by Sarah, tracking exactly $34,250 of my salary being funneled directly to Tristan over the last 24 months. For 2 years, I believed I was building a life with the woman I loved. I announced coldly to the paralyzed crowd. In reality, I was unknowingly funding the lifestyle of her unemployed ex-boyfriend, while serving as a useful idiot to secure her upcoming inheritance. Chloe's face drained of all color. She looked like she was going to vomit. "David, stop. Please, stop," she shrieked, lunging for the microphone. I stepped smoothly out of her reach. I clicked to the final slide. A photo of Tristan, pulled from his social media, alongside the Venmo receipts proving he was the recipient of every stolen dollar. "I am not your placeholder, Chloe," I said, my voice cutting through her sobbing. "I am the man who just audited your entire fraudulent existence." I looked at Arthur in the front row. The wealthy, strict patriarch was staring at the screen, his face twisted in an expression of absolute, unbridled fury. The veins in his neck were pulsing visibly. His strict moral code had been utterly violated by his own daughter, and the public humiliation was destroying him right in front of his wealthy peers. Right on cue, the heavy double doors at the back of the room violently swung open. Tristan strolled into the room, reeking of cheap cologne and completely oblivious to the nuclear detonation that had just occurred. He smirked, looking around the dark, silent room. "Hey, babe, heard you wanted to see your real soulmate tonight," he slurred loudly. The timing was so perfect it felt scripted. Chloe screamed, dropping to her knees in her white silk dress, hiding her face in her hands. Arthur snapped. The stoic millionaire charged forward, bypassing me completely, and stood over his sobbing daughter. "You stole from him?" Arthur roared, his voice shaking the crystal glasses on the tables. "You used this man, you used my lawyer, and you lied to my face to secure my money for this pathetic loser?" He pointed a trembling finger at Tristan, who had finally looked at the massive projector screen and frozen in sheer terror. "Daddy, please, I can explain," Chloe wailed, grabbing at his pant leg. "You get nothing," Arthur bellowed, kicking his leg free from her grasp. "The trust is revoked. You are completely cut off. Do not ever come back to my house." The crowd of friends, the same women who had laughed at me in my own kitchen, were backing away from her like she had a contagious disease. Tristan, realizing the free money train had just derailed spectacularly, turned around and sprinted out the doors without a single word to her. I calmly unplugged my laptop from the AV system. I closed the lid, tucked it under my arm, and walked down the center aisle. Chloe crawled toward me, sobbing hysterically, begging for forgiveness, but I didn't even break my stride. I stepped around her like she was a piece of trash on the sidewalk. I walked out into the cool night air, leaving the chaos, the screaming, and the ruins of her completely shattered life locked safely behind those heavy doors. For the first time in 2 entire years, I could finally breathe clean air. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Arthur stayed true to his word. He legally dismantled the trust fund the very next week and froze her out of the family assets. Without my salary and without her father's backing, Chloe's boutique PR agency collapsed within a month. She had to break the lease on the luxury apartment and move into a cramped studio across town. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Tristan blocked her number the minute he realized she was completely broke. As for me, I kept my head down and focused on rebuilding. Sarah, the brilliant coworker who helped me execute the entire operation, helped me navigate the emotional fallout. We celebrated the closure of the joint account with a remarkably expensive steak dinner. Therapy helped me unpack the profound trust issues I developed from sleeping next to a sociopath for 2 years, but I survived. If you are ever betrayed like this, do not let your initial anger dictate your actions. Explosive rage feels good in the moment, but it gives your abuser an opening to play the victim. If I had screamed at her in the kitchen that night, she would have spun a web of lies, kept my money, and likely found a way to secure that massive trust fund. Instead, I used cold, calculated logic. I let her build her own financial and social gallows, and all I did was pull the lever. Know your worth, secure your data, and never let anyone treat your life as a waiting room. You are not a placeholder in your own story. You are the main character, and you hold the power to write the final chapter. The betrayal taught me a very painful but incredibly necessary lesson about protecting my own energy, finances, and heart from people who only wear masks of love. I walked away with my dignity, my bank accounts, and absolute peace of mind.